First, Elon Musk, the founder of PayPal, chairman of Solar City, CEO of SpaceX and Tesla Motors. He shows off his brand new bet on the future, the Tesla sedan. 0 to 60 for the standard model. How fast?
Roughly 0 to 60 in about 6 seconds, which is pretty fast. And then the performance version is 0 to 60 in 4.4 seconds. It's actually faster than a Porsche 911 Carrera.
So all touchscreen, just like an iPad.
Right, and you can go full screen as well. And it's pulling off Google Maps. It has offline navigation as well as Google Maps. Radio Luanda.
Wow. You're not kidding. I listen to this all the time.
What? They're listening to Nirvana?
Listening to Nirvana. I love it. And then the typical charge takes how long to fully recharge a battery?
With the supercharger, you can actually recharge in less than an hour. But that's mostly going to be useful for intercity trips. At home, it's fine to charge overnight.
So no big deal. Plus, you're rarely charging a full charge. You're charging just a marginal charge. And the range, I mean, the biggest concern, obviously, about these vehicles is range anxiety. At least has been traditionally in electric cars. So the range here for the standard Model S is what?
So there's 3 ranges, 160 miles, 230 miles, and a 300-mile range car. So is this the whole interview, by the way?
No. I told you, just a couple of things. They'll splice it, then we'll quickly do it.
Okay, all right.
You go. Elon, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
The future of electric cars, I mean, is it pushing the envelope of imagination and focusing on design, focusing on technology that's going to be the key to scale electric vehicles in this country and around the world?
Tesla and other car companies need to make great electric cars at a price that is comparable to gasoline cars, and then they will sell, and that's it.
As easy as that.
I mean, it's hard to do that, but that's what needs to be done. And so with the Model S, we've kind of a mid-price, mid-volume car, and then we have a extension of that platform, which is the Model X. That's our SUV. That'll come out in a couple of years, and then the vehicle after that will be our sort of high volume, lower priced car. That'll be kind of around $30,000.
And all of these being produced in California, in the United States by definition.
Right.
So this is all domestic manufacturing, American jobs, and American ingenuity and innovation, right?
Yes, and we really are doing manufacturing. Actually, we had our annual shareholder meeting, and I showed the video of literally we have coils of aluminum and sheets of plastic coming in and cars coming out. So we do real manufacturing. It's not like we're just sort of sticking a few bits together. What
do you think is the future of electric vehicles? Are we going to be a hybrid nation? Because there seems to be great adaptation of hybrids, or at least adoption of hybrids.
Right.
But as you said, there's not a lot of choices on the electric front. And Chevy Volt's got its issues, and the Leaf and the Toyota RAV4, which actually uses some of the technology that Tesla has advanced. What do you see the future? And in extension of that question or consideration, is it the battery that's the greatest limiting force in terms of larger commercialization?
The battery is the single biggest contributor. Although the battery sets kind of the energy bank, and then depending on how efficient the electric motor is and the rest of the drivetrain and the drag coefficient, basically all the uses of energy will set the range. And so for the Model S, for example, has the lowest drag coefficient of any premium sedan. It may actually be lower than any car. We're going to calibrate it in the wind tunnels, but it's got a really good drag coefficient, which is important for the highway range.
These are safe cars.
Yes, with the Model S, we're aiming to have the safest car of any vehicle. So the crumple zone in the front is like about 3 times longer than a normal crumple zone because there's no big engine block there, which is really good for if you have a high speed, like a head-on collision or something, and you need to absorb that impact over a long distance. And then we have the lowest side pole intrusion because we have to have this ultra strong extrusion that runs along the side. We have double the roof crush capability of any car, so the car can handle 4 times its own weight on its roof.
And if you were advising GM, some of these big 3 auto manufacturers, Ford and others, you say stay the course on electric vehicles?
Absolutely. If they don't, they are going to lose market share dramatically in the future.
And hybrids are like amphibians; they're sort of half and half, not good enough, part of an evolution.
I think like a mild hybrid where it's just sort of dealing with the stop-start, like the current version of the Prius is fine because that does have an efficiency improvement. But the plug-in hybrid, I think, is probably not the best way to go. That's sort of like the Volt. I mean, I applaud any effort in the direction of electric vehicles. It's just that I do think if you go purely electric or purely gasoline, then you're able to make the best gasoline car, the best electric car. And if you kind of split the baby, it does not end up being as good.
And when we come back, why Elon Musk wants to go to Mars and how he plans to make it happen after the break. The spacecraft launch isn't from NASA. It's a new generation of space exploration and travel, private enterprise. And at the forefront of this new venture is SpaceX. It was founded by Elon Musk 12 years ago with his own $100 million personal investment. And just this spring, his first spacecraft, the Dragon, made it into orbit with a perfect recovery at the end of May. But SpaceX isn't competing with NASA. In fact, NASA has awarded several multi-million-dollar contracts to SpaceX so far. Perhaps an ideal example of public-private partnership. Here's Elon to explain. SpaceX is going gangbusters now. You've just had a successful launch on May 31st, which was the first commercial craft to go up to orbit and actually make its way down here in the Pacific Ocean. What's your sense of where you are, and what's your concern as you grow this company?
SpaceX is doing really well. We had a successful mission at the space station. We were able to go back there and back again. It really exceeded our great best expectations, and now we're going to go do a whole bunch more missions like that. We'll also be launching satellites, broadcast and communication satellites, weather mapping, that kind of thing. In probably 3 years or so, we'll be launching astronauts to the space station, and so we'll take over from the Russians, because in the meantime, the Russians are transporting American astronauts.
So what happened? Last year, the space shuttle was shuttered last summer. So that ended, from America's perspective, our dominance. We don't even have the capacity, outside of your prospects and some others that are in your field, to even send folks to the space station. We actually have to use Russian technology.
Yeah.
So now NASA is looking to the private sector. This is the next era of space exploration and cargo and astronaut travel and the like. You have contracted with NASA for, what, 12 cargo runs?
We have 12 missions ahead, yeah.
And they've invested a huge amount of time, energy, and money into your capacity privately to do what the government, federal government, American government, NASA, has been doing for a generation.
That's really a huge precedent, because historically NASA has done the launch vehicle development and operation under kind of a government model, and they've outsourced it to private sector for the first time. And we're fortunate enough that NASA picked us. And I have to obviously give a lot of credit here to NASA, because I really wouldn't have been able to start SpaceX without the great work that NASA has done, nor would we have come as far without their help. So,
and what were you thinking? I mean, this is a decade in the making, SpaceX, right?
Yeah.
But you didn't come out of a background and you didn't come out of NASA. You didn't come out of a background in space.
Improbable outcome.
Yeah. Well, how did and the reason I frame, from PayPal and the internet to changing the way we look at the consumption and production of energy and transportation, solar, and now space. What's the natural connection? What was the inspiration 10 years ago or so to start SpaceX?
I guess I got a little disappointed that we'd been to the moon in 1969, and then we were only able to go to low Earth orbit, and then of course with the shuttle retiring, now we can't even do that. So that's not a good trajectory.
Downward trend.
It's a downward trend. Yeah, absolutely. And we're so used to technology just sort of naturally improving, but it doesn't naturally improve. It improves because people work really hard to make it improve. And you have new companies, and they compete, and they try to make things better. And so that's what I thought was perhaps missing in the space arena, because it's such a high capital endeavor. It's a very difficult technology problem. So there was a lack of new entrants into the space business, and so it was kind of dominated by monopoly, duopoly situations, and there was just not a forcing function for innovation.
What made you think, and I mean this sincerely, what made you think you can make it work? What was the driving energy behind that?
No, I thought I would fail.
But you thought it would be a noble failure?
If something's important enough, it's still worth doing, even if the odds of success are low.
And you put a lot of your own personal wealth into the company.
Yeah, I put most of the money that I made from PayPal into SpaceX, and the remainder went into Tesla and Solar City.
So you put it all on the line.
Yeah, actually I had to borrow money from friends to pay the rent, literally.
Literally.
Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous.
You're just not a guy that's going to sit on the beach and watch the waves come crashing in.
No, it was a narrow thing there in 2008. Almost all three companies almost died.
Because they all were founded in decade of 2000, 2002, 3, 4 Tesla, and then in Solar City in 2006 roughly.
Yeah, approximately.
Yeah.
SpaceX was 2002. Tesla's technically 2003, but really more like 2004, and then Solar City 2006. So like roughly a 2-year gap.
Yeah.
And then in 2008, we had the third launch of SpaceX fail. The Tesla financing round fell apart because the world economy went into a tailspin, and trying to find funding for a car company in late 2008 while GM and Chrysler are going bankrupt is not fun. And then Solar City had a deal with Morgan Stanley, and Morgan Stanley couldn't honor the deal because they were trying to figure out how not to go bankrupt.
Wow.
So it was super tough.
And what's your reflective lesson learned in that process? Do you feel you're over leveraged in the context of not just financially, but just spread too thin in terms of your passions and endeavors? Or, I mean, in hindsight, you can say it all worked out because Solar City's doing as well or better than ever.
Yeah.
Tesla's rolling out its second iteration, and of course, SpaceX just had not its third or fourth failure, but its first big success.
Right,
recently.
absolutely. Yeah, actually, things are going really well right now. But it's worth making the point that they really weren't always going well, and there were some extraordinarily tough times.
So what did you learn from that? What's the takeaway from that? Were you stretched too thin?
I learned I've got a high pain threshold.
Yeah, of course, that's for sure.
Man, I never thought I was like somebody who could have a nervous breakdown, but on the Sunday before Christmas on 2008, I was like, man, this is pretty close. And then on the Monday, NASA called and said that SpaceX had won a $1.6 billion contract. So I was like, yes.
That would change things.
That would. And then we had to close the Tesla financing round, and it closed on the 24th, like a few days later. And if it didn't close, then we would have gone bankrupt after Christmas. So we certainly have the Department of Energy and the government to thank in terms of lending a helping hand. That was really great. But it is important for people in general to appreciate that it wasn't a taxpayer bailout as is sometimes portrayed in the
remaining
press.
moment. SpaceX, is this the beginning of the end of NASA, or is NASA going to go through a completely different evolution, and it's a new phase of NASA in partnerships with private commercial entities like yourself, SpaceX, and others that may enter into the same field?
I think we are entering a new era of space exploration. There is an extremely important role for NASA because NASA creates these unique scientific instruments, things like the Hubble, the Mars probes. NASA operates the space station. But I think that as far as space transportation goes, I think that's going to become increasingly increasingly commercial in nature.
And when you mean
which is a good thing,
Does that mean those watching in 5, 10, 15 years will be able to do not just suborbital but actual orbital trips?
Yeah, absolutely.
That you really believe that?
Yes, I do, absolutely. I think that's quite likely at this point. Yeah.
And you've also been so bold as to suggest Mars. Forget the moon. That's 69. You're making the argument in the future, we're Mars.
We ought to aim to make life multiplanetary, to have a self-sustaining civilization on Mars as well. And that's not because I think Earth is going to hell in a handbasket or something. I mean, it's actually multiplanetary for a reason. It's that I think we want to become a spacefaring civilization, get out there and explore the stars, and that's a really exciting, inspiring future, much more than a future where we're forever confined to Earth. And I think it's particularly for the United States. I mean, the United States is a nation of explorers. I mean, people came here from somewhere else. So we're a distillation of the exploratory spirit of humanity. So if any country is to be excited about such things, it is this country. And
for those critics out there that believe NASA and the Obama administration, to some extent, made a huge mistake by supporting and basically subcontracting some of these efforts. What do you say?
I find some of this opposition so ironic. This is extremely free market. I mean, what could be more free market than doing competitive commercial contracts? And that there's been some opposition from some parts of the Republican Party for what is arguably one of the most Republican things that the president has done. But I think some of that opposition has waned in the wake of recent successes.
You'll be on a capsule, the Dragon, to Mars when?
Well, I'm hopeful that Mars trips could occur sometime in the next 10 to 20 years. I'd say 10 is probably optimistic, but I would be surprised if it's 20.
And you'll be leading by example, I imagine? First in line?
I would like to go. I'd like to. I think it'd be great to be born on Earth and to die on Mars. Just not at the point of impact.
For that, thanks, Elon,
right.
for being here.